Good morning, everyone listening to us from back home on this show. Behind the screens, domestic abuse seek help. You are welcome. We're broadcasting live from Faza 97.1 FM studio in Nottingham. Welcome to the show. So, domestic abuse behind the screens seek help. It's a radio show that we bring to you on Thursdays about noon. Is an enlightenment program to the entire community, and it's all about being real about domestic abuse and how that it is still rife in our communities. And we say no to it, and we create awareness, and we educate people, either potential victims or those who are already victims of domestic abuse. Welcome one more time. So today we want to look at the three P's of domestic abuse interventions. So um, we have with me this morning again our regular guest, Miss Rachel Dada. Want to say hello to everyone joining us, please, ma'am?
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon to our guests, our regular guests, and as many as are joining us for the first time. Thank
Good
you.
afternoon, everyone joining us for the first time, depending on what part of the world you are hearing us from. It's about noon here. It's just gone past noon here in Nottingham, and it's the same all over England. So, welcome to the show. Three P's, talking of how things should flow when we talk of interventions in things, policies, procedures, how things ought to go in domestic abuse. What are these three P's, man? What's this all about when we talk of domestic abuse or domestic violence?
Right. Thank you very much, sir. As we always do, before we go into the topic of the discussion of today, we will look at what we mean by domestic abuse and domestic violence and or domestic violence. The two terms, often used interchangeably together. So what is domestic abuse then? Domestic abuse is an incident or pattern of incidents of controlling, coercive, threatening, degrading, and violent behaviors, including sexual violence. In the majority of cases, from a partner, often can be from the age of 16
Mm.
to another partner. So we're talking of intimate partner relationships or an ex-partner. It can be from a family member to another family member or from a carer to a cared for.
Mm.
It's very common in the vast majority of cases, more commonly experienced by women from men. But there are also a lot of statistics evidencing domestic abuse, domestic violence from women to men. It includes, but not exclusive to coercive control, like we stated, psychological and emotional abuse, financial or economic abuse, harassment and stalking, online or digital abuse. Thank you very much.
I'm also grateful for your time and that opening to insight and sorry to give insight and to educate, especially those who are joining us for the first time. Um, Please be patient with us. Everyone who has always followed us on this show. That's the best way for us to start off because of those who are new or who are fresh joining us on this show. Domestic abuse, seek help. Interventions, three P's. It could be
Mm.
more than three, but basic three P's. Whenever we hear anything domestic abuse, why should you flow in a particular order?
Mm.
Can't we do one or reverse the other in which it's supposed to flow? Can't we do number two before number three? Why should it be one, two, three, and in that order? And what are these three P's, ma?
Thank you. And be clear what we mean by.
You're breaking. Uh-huh.
Can you hear
Yes,
me? Sir?
you were breaking. Yes, it was breaking initially. Go ahead now.
Thank you. I said we have to be clear on what we mean by these three P's. So we have protect, to preserve, and to provide. Yes, these are the three P's. You asked the question, sir, whether the intervention should flow as as we have the P's.
As you
But
stated them now.
as stated, but yes, well, but however, it can be, it feeds into each other. That's the word I'll use. Yes.
It's like a jigsaw puzzle that fits into
Exactly.
themselves.
Yes. So there is no clear cut. Okay, this is when we protect. This is when we preside. This is when we provide. It fits into each other depending on the circumstances, because every case is different. Every circumstance is different. So what do we mean by to protect? Yeah. I will take it from the point of view of it is varied when we are talking about the word when we are talking about the theme protect as it relates to domestic abuse and domestic violence, because then we are looking at what is a simple question. It's as basic as what can we do to make sure it doesn't happen, or now that it has happened, how can we go about it? Because
Okay, let me just interject you a bit. So when we say protect,
mm,
are we talking of complete prevention, possibility of it happening at all? Or we are talking of the fact that, oh, now that it has happened, let's protect the victim or potential victim from harm. Is that what we mean by the first P, protect?
it can be both. Because so one, if we take it back, back as to make not uh, to protect, to make sure it does not happen. So and on that, at that level, we may interchange the word protect with prevent,
Okay.
prevention. Yes. At that stage, in fact, the word prevention would be most appropriate. Do you understand? It would be most appropriate to use the word to prevent, because what we're saying is that we're trying to keep this issue getting to this individual or these individuals. You understand? Put basically. So when we're talking of prevention, then so it starts off, and every situation, starts off with the stage of prevention, because the stage of prevention is like what we are doing now. It is the stage of awareness,
Awareness creation,
awareness creation, educating
education.
the public, creating awareness. And how do we do it? Providing information, making, ringing the bells in their ears that, look, we're trying to prevent you from, it's like, you are preventing, a dog from getting into the ditch.
Hmm.
So you can build barriers. Yes? You build barriers, to prevent that, or maybe a baby crawling, beyond a particular location.
Going towards the staircase or something.
Thank you. That's a very good example. They usually have gates, stair gates. We usually have stair gates within the home to prevent, a baby, at the stage of, maybe crawling, still picking their
Falling
feet,
over.
falling over or across. So that is so. So that we're saying we're preventing. Yes, that is a form of prevention. That is a measure that has been put in that context to prevent accident, injury happening, to bring hazards, against hazards is a risk management measure. Great. So when
Okay.
we, so the stage, the stage where we talk of protection or prevention before it happens, it is the stage of risk management.
So
Stage
it's
of,
a risk mitigation kind of.
yes.
You are looking at, if we remain silent, fold our hands, this is what is likely to happen and it will be unpleasant. What can we quickly do to intervene? Yes. So you are weighing the options. So it's a risk management
Yes. So,
issue.
and this is a very good example. What we're doing is an example, creating awareness, providing information, educating the public. That's the way of doing it. Thank you. Now, when we now move on, we're still on protect. When we
Okay.
now, when we now, whereas it is the reality of life that, you know, um, again in life, part of growing in life is also taking risks.
Making mistakes, actually.
You cannot, and that is where, when we're talking about risk management, risk management procedures, plans do not entirely eliminate risks. It cuts it down, it
To
minimizes, it reduces the likelihood of the hazard happening. It doesn't remove completely the hazard not happening. So,
interesting.
so in situations, in the very few situations, like one in a thousand, for example, I'm just, that's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
rough, yeah, one
Estimate.
one in a thousand, individuals, where it now happens. So it has happened. What can we do?
Uh-huh.
Well, it has happened thus far. Like I said, like I mentioned earlier on, every case is different. You understand? For in
Yes.
some cases, you pick it up at the early stage. In some cases, it might have, well, probably at the early stage, it's just between the intimate partners, no child or children involved. In some cases, oh, then it's a big family. In some cases, it might have got to a crisis point. You understand? So, but at whatever stage you pick it up, then the the next um, thing to do is to protect. It's getting worse. So what we're saying is that any situation can be rescued,
Okay.
whether it is still at the first level, it is medium, whatever level, the risk, it can be rescued. So now when we're talking of, and that is where safeguarding, for example, and a way of, mitigating protection is safeguard, is to safeguard. You understand? When we
And
try,
I'm just going to interrupt you a bit there,
yes, sir.
because to a lay uh, person listening to us on this show, like typical uh, housewife, typical husband that stays looking after the family while the wife goes to work. These are all possible scenarios where we could have abuse happening between intimate partners.
Yes.
So now you have just used a terminology, safeguarding. What do you mean by that?
Thank you. What do you mean by safeguarding? To safeguard is to protect an adult's right to live in safety, free from abuse and neglect. It is about protection. It is a way of. It is a policy whereby the statutory organizations, the local authority,
They're required to ensure that everyone is safe, everyone is
yes,
protected.
the right of an adult. We have adults safeguarding, we have children safeguarding. adults or children to ensure that they live in safety, free from abuse and neglect. And when we say free from abuse and neglect, is a very global word because an example is domestic abuse. Abuse is abuse. You don't call it any other name, whether it's domestic or wherever, workplace abuse. So safeguarding it means protecting one adult, yes, right, to live in safety, free from abuse and neglect. However, the law categorizes, what type of adults are we talking about? We often say adults who are care and support needs. Care
Okay.
and support needs. But however, it's not only those who have care and support needs that the local authority has responsibility to.
Mm.
Do you understand? An adult may have care and support needs, but may not be receiving services from the local authority. An adult may not have care and support needs, but yet the local authority, as an arm of the government, still have a right to protect that individual. So part of safeguarding under the Care Act of 2014 is to raise awareness. This is where it concerns us. It is to raise awareness so that communities as a whole, alongside professionals, play their part in preventing. Remember we were talking about prevention.
Absolutely.
That means preventing, that means stopping it from
Let it
happening.
not even happen in the first instance.
Let it not even happen in the first instance. Identifying, okay, now that it appears that it's happening, do we know what we're talking about? Have we been able to pick it up? And responding, okay, it has been established that yes, indeed, it is happening. So how do we respond to it? To abuse and neglect.
Interesting. Okay, so that takes care of the first P. It is
We
ultimate.
are
So what's the second P?
not yet, sir.
Not yet. Okay,
We're
sorry.
talking of protect. in,
Yes.
how we deal with domestic abuse now, we're becoming more specific,
Okay.
dealing with domestic abuse and domestic violence.
Abuse.
You understand? When we're talking of protect, there is a way whereby the legal system
Okay.
provides a variety of measures to protect survivors of domestic violence. Yes? And abuse from further abuse. You understand? We already said that when we get to now we're talking of protection in the realm of it is we've noted that it has been happening, it's been identified well. So how do we stop it from getting worse or from it happening again
Okay.
and again? Okay, so these measures, now we are talking legal now, yes? These measures includes, so we're talking of, protecting a survivor or a victim from the threat of more violence, you understand? More of it, so that they can live a safe life, yes? After all, they've been caught up in it. But, well, that doesn't mean that they have to be stuck with it forever, for life. So what happens? So there are we have a list of protection orders. So list of protection orders, which ensures that victims seek what is informally called, for example, an emergency injunction,
Okay.
which is granted by a civil court,
Okay.
usually issued without the perpetrator knowing about it. So the court can, maybe a solicitor can make, an application to a civil court on behalf of a victim or a survivor without the perpetrator knowing, and will be on the behalf of the victim and maybe the children as well. You understand? To be
Awesome.
served, to the perpetrator. And this orders, there's a list of them. We won't go into them. We don't have time to go into them now. We have the what we call the non-molestation order. It's designed to stop someone from pestering, attacking, or threatening, or even inflicting physical violence on the other, intimidation. Everything that we talked about when we're talking about the definition of domestic abuse. Yes, and so a non-molestation order is usually, lasts from 6 to 12 months,
Okay.
and when there is a breach of it, it is an arrestable offense.
What's that order? What's expected of each party?
Well, what happens is that it stops the
Abuser,
perpetrator, yeah,
perpetrator,
from further threatening.
access. Is it access or threatening?
Well, whether pestering,
Are
whether
this is this at a stage where they are still inhabiting the same
at
space?
sure. At this stage, you can see that they're not staying together.
Oh, they are separated at this
They're
stage.
separated, but well, the world is a free place. They can still, the other one maybe can still.
Mingle, catch up. Yeah.
You understand? So, and again, or maybe inciting other people to threaten or
Threatening.
intimidate the victim. Then there's also what we call occupation order. This relates to the family home. It specifies who can live in the family home. So the occupation order might state that the perpetrator can no longer live in the home. Yes, it's also I mean usually the duration of it is between 6 and 12 months, and and the power of arrest can be attached to it as well.
Okay.
There is also what we call the prohibited steps order.
Okay.
So, so the prohibited steps order. This is what Maybe okay. Of course, there have been separation. Even there could be divorce. Then maybe they've been to court, and the judge has given. I mean, under the Children's Act. Okay, maybe now children are involved. Yes. So parental responsibility has been given to maybe both of them. So it could be the child or the children stay with one for 2 weeks and with the other for 2 weeks. You understand?
Yes,
They
absolutely. Kind of custody sharing.
share that amongst themselves. But however, it can prohibit someone with parental responsibility, like it can prohibit because maybe the dad might say, okay, I have parental responsibility, so I will take the children away. You understand? So
Yes.
a prohibited steps order can stop that. Okay? It can from for stop the children being taken away from the care from the person who is given the care
Okay.
at that time. And you also have the enforcement, the domestic violence protection notice.
Okay.
Domestic violence protection notice is what the police can serve on an alleged perpetrator or abuser who continues to constitute risk of violence to their partner.
Hmm.
And this can graduate to an order. First is a notice, then it can graduate to an order. It is not. This is not exclusive. It goes on, but because of our time, we will go to preserve. Hello, sir.
I'm there. I'm
You're
just
here.
want
Wonderful.
to move now to the next P.
To the next P. So when we're talking about preserve, and remember at the beginning, sir, I did state that these three P's, protect, preserve, and provide, they don't stand alone, completely separate from each other. They are
Hmm.
interwoven, because
Yes.
sir, we have been even with by discussing protect. I will expect that we have been able to pick up, some details within the protection with protection orders. When we discuss the safeguarding process about provision, because when there is provision of yeah, there is you provide because you are providing support.
Absolutely.
Am I making sense, sir?
Absolutely.
This orders too is a way of supporting the victims. Yes. So now, with preserve, what do we mean by the word preserve? To preserve is to maintain something in its original or existing state. When we say to maintain something in its original state, in the context of domestic abuse, I'll take it back to when we were talking about prevention. At the beginning,
Yeah.
when everything was in its original state,
State.
nothing has happened,
No issues
to
whatsoever
upset the
in
balance,
the relationship.
the relationship. Okay, so you are maintaining, to preserve, so of course to preserve is like, oh, you want to preserve is to make sure everything is right. Now, when we're talking about in its existing state, anything might have happened in that period. Then it takes us to the second, the other uh, meaning of the word preserve, which is a sphere of activity
Okay.
regarded as being reserved for a particular person or group. The word preserve is a sphere of activity regarded as being reserved for a particular person or group. For example, I take myself as an example. My, as an individual, my territory, everything about me, I regard it as being reserved for my own self, as to do as and how I went when I want to. Yes.
Yeah.
So anything that may impact any situation, any behavior, any somebody else, behaving somehow that impacts on my
Sure.
reserve
Yeah.
territory, yeah, that's infringement of my right.
Okay.
It can be termed as abuse.
I see.
And so to preserve is to keep or save from injury, loss, or ruin. These other words that can be used, we call them synonyms. In place of preserve, include to conserve, keep,
Okay.
safeguard. Remember, we talked about safeguard earlier on, sir.
Absolutely.
To preserve is also a way of safeguarding. You can see how those P's crawl into each other.
Interconnected. Yes.
You can use the word protect also in the place of preserve because you are trying to maintain, to sustain something in its original or existing state. Save, secure, maintain. These are all synonyms to the word, preserve. So when we are now talking about in the context of domestic abuse, actually the word preserve, it's it carries a lot of more higher meaning and connotation than the word protect.
Yes.
Am I making sense, sir?
Absolutely. Because you can easily make a mess of all your input during the process of protection if you do not weigh in on the preservation bit. Could have
That
been a wasted effort.
that is it. So and because to protect, okay, you keep it safe, yes, but when you preserve it, you sustain even everything that keeps it safe,
Hmm.
the resources, and at the same time you are developing new methods of keeping it safe. You can
Keeping
see that
it.
the word preserve goes a long way,
Hmm.
more it goes further, it goes further and further
Absolutely.
than protect. Because you're only putting in measures to protect what you've already identified. How
Hmm.
about the ones that are yet to be identified?
Hmm.
So then, so it means that preserving is more comprehensive than protecting. Now, when we talk about provision, to provide, Well, you can see even all that we have been talking about, we've been talking about provision of services. Because when we talk about safeguarding doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Yes.
It is services that safeguards. It doesn't happen. Even when we're talking about protection or the protection orders, they don't exist in a vacuum. We started off that the legal system. We said we identified the
Social justice system, the police, the social workers, the who else constitute the
we're,
same?
we're talking about services that constitute professionals,
Yes.
social services, social workers, psychologists, the criminal justice system.
Yes.
So we're talking about, conglomeration of resources, both statutory and voluntary.
Okay.
Yeah. So when we're talking about, so you can see that the provision is already there, because all these terms, they don't exist in a
In
vacuum.
isolation.
You see, these are practical terms that must be carried out, that must be enforced, that must be put in place before for it to have meaning, for it to be effective. And some people who do this. Is a system that puts this in place. So
Interesting.
provision. But moving on further, another area of, when we're talking about provision to provide, what have we provided? What have we given? What have we made available?
Yes.
Then that takes us to the area of, a very good way that we can encompass this is when we look at the Domestic Abuse Act
Of 90 of 20,
2021.
2021. Yeah.
Yes. So, because it's like, everybody have been, there have been talks, this is going on, something is going on, we are seeing this, we are seeing pattern of this, we're seeing this pattern where, this is happening. So how do we put it together? Now we've identified that, okay, we have what we call victims, we have what we call, abusers, perpetrators, they abuse, everybody. But how do we put this together in a more articulate way so that it states what we are doing, so that it's written in black and white? So it doesn't stand like, or it takes my mind back to, in government, there's what we call written constitution, unwritten constitution. Unwritten constitution is just a collection of statutory laws, that were made, everything put together, as and when. But written constitution is there in black and white. Bring it out. That is the book of the law. We see it there. So that is what the Domestic Abuse Act 2021 gives us when we're talking about anything relating to domestic abuse, any discussion relating to domestic abuse and domestic violence. So
Interesting.
it is part of this talking about provision. So what services? Okay, we talk about services. What do services provide? What do they give? They provide independent advocacy to victims, advocating to support them in advocating for their rights. Because everything that services, put in place, or when we talk about the safeguarding process, to protect, adults, from, to maintain their rights, from abuse and neglect. What we are saying is that some people are speaking on their behalf, advocating, for their rights, providing support through the justice system, support for the young people. Then there's also economic support, abusers, seek to, a lot of cases, perpetrators, they seek, they abuse the victims financially.
Economically, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how does, the services provide support to victims in that way? by providing financial support, even also support for children, for where children are involved.
Oh,
You understand? So, and again, support in the community. Providing refuge. You understand? Housing, so housing support. Providing support to secure their um, tech. You understand? They may use technology. We talked about digital and online abuse.
okay.
Abusers can use technology to continue to threaten,
The preservation of the
intimidate their victims, or harass them. So all this, and others that we have lined up. For example, under the Domestic Abuse Act of 2021,
right.
there's a ban on GPs charging for medical evidence for domestic abuse, including for legal aid. Yeah. And another one is a duty. We've talked about this on this platform before. A duty on the government to issue a code of practice on how data is shared between the public services, the police, and the immigration services, for example. You remember? Such that
Absolutely.
exactly, such that one doesn't impact on the other, because the police have this data does not mean that then it will impact on the
We should
immigration
just be disclosed to other parties
other services.
with no discretion.
Exactly, without discretion. And it is also under the Domestic Abuse Act 2021 that we have, for the first time, the legal definition of domestic abuse, which recognizes children as victims.
I say,
Then the creation of the Domestic Abuse Commissioner, somebody, an identified individual with, with a team that can, set up a team. These are the people that we can direct every matter, every concern, every issue about relating to domestic abuse or domestic violence to. It's not just that, oh, we reported it, we're not sure who will pick it up. Now we know it's got a name now, we've got a name tag. Somebody is responsible for it.
people are responsible for everything that goes on as far as domestic abuse or domestic violence
Yes.
is concerned. So people listening to us at this time should be hopeful that their matter is being looked into, whether it's been officially declared, reported to the authorities, or you are still behind the screens, hiding, not knowing what to do. We have these three keys in place for your sake, and it should ideally boost the confidence of those who are still behind the screens. What will you have to say in line with people listening to us now? And they are jittery, they have been so much manipulated, so much held in this fear. Incidentally, this week is the Mental Health Awareness Week globally, but we'll be coming back to that, where their um, psychology, psychomotor has been seriously damaged and affected, and they are not even considering the possibility of voicing it out to a third party for intervention. What will you want to tell them on during this show?
Thank you very much, sir. For anyone listening to us, I suppose from the beginning of this discussion, even if someone just, bumped on this show by, oh, so something like this goes on at this time of the week, of the day, we've been able to identify, to state clearly what we mean by domestic abuse and domestic violence. From the topic of our discussion today, talking about the three P's, we started off from when everything was void. Nothing, everything was so clean and tidy. Prevention. So, peradventure, someone has been lucky and everything has been going on right. You haven't even heard that. You can't even imagine that some people, things like this can be going on. How can this be
Mm.
happening in intimate partner relationship? Somebody, you know, threatening the other. Now you know that it can happen.
Mm.
So we started off from this, from the point of prevention, which involves educating, raising awareness, what we're doing
Yeah.
right now, to the point of, well, then if something has happened, there are measures to protect it from happening further. And, well, as well as protecting it, then there is also making sure that, it doesn't happen again. Then, for the ones that have become victims, there is support available. There is
Yeah.
always support available. That is why anyone, or it may not be happening to you, maybe somebody you think it may be happening to somebody you know. The advice is speak out. There is, oh, don't think nobody's listening.
It may be happening only to your neighbor, to your niece, to your extended relation, or to your friend at work. This is the time for early interventions to support and to help whosoever this is happening to and to speak out. Thank you very much, ma'am. I think this is where we draw a curtain to today's show. Again, as we normally tell you, about the same time next week, we are around and we're about this show. Thank you, Miss Rachel Dadell, who has had to go back to work at this time. Anyone listening to me now, please feel free to shout out. Do not remain silent. Domestic abuse, there's no honor, no glory in it. You must speak out. It's very important that you share your burdens and you let out the steam, even for the wellness, for your wellness mentally. Okay, so I want to thank you for following us on this show on whatever platform you are joined on in today. So until we come again your way the next time, this is where we draw a curtain to today's show. My name is Olusegun. Thank you for staying with us. Have a nice day.